When you're a world builder, you might want to make a pantheon of gods to populate your worlds. It's no easy thing, however. I have seen a lot of people create things that are pretty uninspired, and my own first attempt at making a cast of gods for the people in my world to worship was comically bad. With many of our players playing clerics, paladins, divine soul sorcerers, blessed one warlocks and the like, and many of our NPCs having a place in their heart for the divine, a boring or flat pantheon can create a stumbling block or a dull note in a vital part of our characters' lives, and I think we can do better. This is Building Better Dungeons, and today we're talking gods. So where do we go wrong with pantheons? It's easy to try and slice the pantheon in a cosmological way. Have a god of life, a god of death, a god of war, a god of knowledge. After all, that is how religion is presented to us in Dungeons & Dragons via the Dungeon Master's Guide, as a variety of domains, each with their own god or two. And that system is functional, but the gods are pretty removed from the culture that supposedly worships them. Think for a moment. Why would anyone worship a god of death? And your gods will want worshippers as a way of exerting their will on the material plane, but if your god of death is just a powerful, death-related dude, what's in it for those who praise him? Do they just want the power? If it's just the power, why not worship a god of nature or light and get that power from a more agreeable and cheery source? I think the impulse to divide up the universe along domains like this leads us to poorly thought out gods and worshippers that don't make sense. When we do this, I think we look at the situation from the wrong end. We should focus on the worshippers, not the worshipped. Why would someone worship a god of death? Perhaps they consider the god a psychopomp, a farrier of souls from one reality to the next. In my campaign, this is the major function of a Threnin, the god of death. People worship him because it comforts them to know that their deceased loved ones are in good hands, and because if they don't, when the time comes, a Threnin might force them to walk the long path, full of hardship, instead of a simpler route to their afterlife. It was this function that a Threnin sprouted from, and I filled in from there. The people of my campaign world, Oga, came to view a Threnin as a god of passage in general. He's a god of changing states, of opening doors, of journeys. Some cultures extend his purview to money. Coins, after all, go on many voyages, and are always changing hands. It's this worship and culture-focused pantheon building that helps keep gods not just interesting, but relevant to the characters and therefore relevant to your players. Your players might do a double take when the shopkeeper praises the god of death after making a good sale, but it's this multiplicity of aspects that keeps gods memorable and interesting, and makes for memorable and interesting conversations with their followers. Let's have a look at what passes for a god of justice in my campaign, Vitarum. Vitarum was originally worshipped as a war deity, and because the people often liked to view their wars as just, Vitarum took on an element of purging wickedness and ensuring righteousness. Vitarum became a deity for anyone trying to strike out and put evil in its place. Soldiers pray before important battles, and common folk put in a prayer to Vitarum before facing off their local bullies. However, not all wars are just, and so the creation of a second god of strife was necessary to justify why these people would sometimes lose their battles. Mocher, god of slaughter and underhanded tactics, the god of victory at any cost. Sometimes, when the culture came to view a previous war as foolish or ill-conceived, they began to believe that their rulers were influenced by Mocher in disguise. They conceived Vitarum and Mocher as brothers, not always easy to tell apart in the heat of battle. Bandits and criminals sometimes pray to Mocher before they do violence, and he often answers their prayers. But Vitarum and Mocher aren't good and evil. Sometimes people in Oga must resort to underhanded tactics to defend themselves from evil, and sometimes evil forces believe with a burning righteousness that their cause is the correct one. Some view Mocher as the more honest of the two brothers. Vitarum dresses war up as a fine game, where the best and most honorable win the day, and Mocher knows the bloody truth of it. Most soldiers will pray to either when it suits them, and most also have a preference. In my world, whether a soldier wears the symbol of Mocher or a symbol of Vitarum can tell you a lot about them, as can whether they wear neither symbol but have both in their back pocket. This kind of process is a lot of fun when you get the hang of it, and helps keep divinity and gods relevant in your world. Crufir is my exploring god, a god of horizons and discovery. They began as a genderless god of the sea that the seafaring peoples would pray to for safe passage, but as these seafaring peoples began to move inland, their need for Crufir changed. Crufir became a god of finding new things, a god that gave luck to explorers and protected pioneers from danger, who delighted in giving their followers new insights and perspectives. As those people built up cities and libraries, Crufr gained an aspect of being a knowledge deity. Many view research as an exploration of a sort, and prayers to Crufr have given these people luck and protection they need to scour great swathes of information and come upon the exact discovery they're looking for. This might seem like a lot of work on the DM's part, but the trick is it's more efficient than it might first appear. When you work gods into cultures like this, they naturally acquire a variety of aspects that mean they can work for multiple different clerical domains. Crufr could be worshipped by a storm cleric in their original aspect as a sea god, or by a nature cleric in their capacity as an exploration deity, or a knowledge cleric who seeks Crufr's guide in discovering new learning. In this way, just 3 to 5 deities woven into a culture can give every cleric in your world a god to lean on, and it can be a lot of fun for your clerics or paladins to find other worshippers of their god who lean into very different aspects. It helps the gods feel real, mysterious, expansive, and powerful when they have multiple domains like this, and it helps keep your pantheon down to a reasonable number that you can actually remember. It's also just a ton of good, clean fun. Of course, most worlds will have more than one culture. You could make a pantheon for each individually, but that is a lot of work. You could make them all work off the same pantheon, but that makes these different cultures feel suspiciously similar. The balance I've found is having a relatively large overall pantheon, about 15 gods in my case, but you could certainly get away with fewer, and have each culture worship 4 or 5 of them. For example, Kernan, my god of lightning. To the Anvil of Livna, my society of tunnel-dwelling dwarves and goblins, Kernan is a god of invention and new ideas, of being creative for a purpose. But to the Red Feathers, the consortium empire of tieflings and Kenku, Kernan is a god of good ideas and communication, a god of marketing, whose symbol often appears on advertisements more than flags. To the Roots of Gerna, the dragonborn elvish alliance, there is no Kernan. They don't know him spiritually at all. In this way, not only do cultures inform the gods, but the gods inform the cultures. My clerics of Kernan can see clear as day the different interpretation of their deity by these different cultures, and it helps them understand these peoples in a more visceral, personal way. It's pantheon building and world building all in one, and as a tool, I really, really recommend it. And that's that. Thanks to our lovely patrons for making these videos happen, and thank you for watching. Good luck with your gods, and safe home.